Different wave. Okay, I
Yeah,
see it
it's a
now.
wave crashing into an island. Yeah. So
Okay.
you were on the yoga grind earlier. How's that going?
Yoga. I try to go every Monday, but yeah, your boy's got joints of an old man. I know you like to joke that I'm an old guy, but hey, I gotta stretch in some fashion. So I've been
Yeah,
pretty good at it. I'm saying pretty good as far as consistently going.
yeah.
So yeah, it's nice. It's nice.
Speaking of
Little
being an
rec center
old
class.
guy, speaking of being an old guy, Amanda asked me when I turned on Before Sunrise. She was like, "How old is this Anthony guy?" I was like, "He's like in his 40s, like early 40s, I think."
Oh my god.
So,
No, for listeners out there, you can guess how old I am, but not 40. Still under 40.
so
My knees will say otherwise, though. My
yeah,
knees may be
true.
over 40. Yeah, right.
Couple ACL injuries and it kind of knocks the age up a little bit,
It
you know.
definitely does. Definitely does.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's Totally Biased Music. It's Blake and Anthony. Today, we are reviewing Life After Death by the Notorious B.I.G. By the way, you're not supposed to call him Biggie, okay? Because Biggie, he was sued for using the name Biggie, or he was threatened to be sued for using the name Biggie by another artist at the time whose name was Biggie. He was a white, like, rock artist. So
Really?
yeah, yeah, so that's why it's the Notorious B.I.G. on everything and not Biggie. But Apple Music intro is how to top a debut that single-handedly reinvigorated East Coast gangster rap, pick up right where it left off, but make everything way bigger. Christopher Wallace's sprawling second album ramps up the drama and the pop sheen. Mo Money, Mo Problems turns a sparkling Diana Ross sample into a triple beam lyrical dream, and the smooth rolling Hypnotize is a spellbinding as its title promises. Still, Big never sacrificed any of the narrative grit. Look no further than the Ten Crack Commandments or his much imitated, never duplicated flow. So this is a long album, Anthony. It's almost
Yeah.
2 hours long. It's a double album. What did you? Was this your first time going front to back? What did you think about it? What do you think about Biggie in general?
So Biggie, I think back to my first memories of Biggie, Biggie Smalls, Christopher Wallace, Notorious B.I.G., the man, the myth, the legend. I think back to the movie Hardball. I think I might have been like 10 or 11. Have you seen Hardball?
No.
Oh, listeners, I feel you out there right now because it's a OG movie, right? But that was my intro into Biggie. In other words, there's a point. It's about kids, inner city kids, playing baseball. Keanu Reeves is there working off his punishment for the courts. It's a great movie. We'll put it on the list for sure. Um, anyway, the kids sing Biggie, and it's like a thing. And I just remember being 10 or 11 and hearing other people sing, I love it when you call me Big Pop. And
Yeah.
so it's like a pivotal part of that movie. And so that was my first intro into Notorious B.I.G. And then, of course, hearing other songs, Juicy, Hypnotize, the radio hits, right? And I think that this album, it kind of, it really cements that legacy of Biggie, one, because of it being released right after he died. I was very shocked to see that it was released, I think 16 days
16
after
days, yeah.
he was murdered, which is
Crazy.
I got a lot of thoughts on that. But in reality, this album, it's a different vibe, right? Because you have the NWA 80s kind of gangster rap, and even Biggie's first album and Tupac too. They're throwing out really hard lyrics, and not to say that this album is not as hard, but the music, the instrumentals, the samples, it gives it this more fresh, like, I don't uplifting perhaps, right? But it's like a more digestible feel for the every person. So I think that this is what kind of really put Biggie in a different lane from a consumption standpoint, because you could play a lot of the stuff on the radio. And it's not going to turn people off. In fact, they're going to recognize Diana Ross. They're going to recognize some of these samples, and really kind of vibe with it. Like I said, this album is a big time vibe, but it was my first time listening to it all the way through. I had obviously heard a lot of these songs before, but it's a really interesting listening. Like I said, the real thing that stuck in my head was just the fact of how close this was put out to his death. Because originally I thought this was put out longer after his death, so like there would have been a lot more time to sit down and maybe structure some of these songs or put Biggie's features into it after death. But in reality, I think a lot of this was already done. You know, it's
Yeah.
hard to say that it wasn't already done 16 days before, but it is an interesting, I think, from a marketing standpoint, from a record label standpoint, to put it out that quickly. I it's hard. It's hard for me to swallow that. You know, what are your thoughts on that? It
So
coming out so early.
the album was originally they had originally planned to release it on Halloween of 1969. Or sorry,
No.
1996.
Right, right. Hmm. He got in
So
like a car accident, I think.
right, and
Biggie
then
did, right?
he got in a car accident, and it was delayed. So it was clearly done and wrapped up and ready to go prior to long before his death, honestly,
Yeah.
because I mean Halloween, and then it came out in March of 1997, so there's several months after the fact. Um, but like what's interesting is it's almost eerie. It's funny, but it's eerie in a way that Life After Death is clearly the title and the theme of it are based off of Ready to Die, right? It's
Right.
supposed to be a direct sequel to Ready to Die, so the name makes sense in that aspect, but it gets more eerie when you realize it was after his death that this came
Right.
out, right? And it is kind of like hey, we still have more music, right? It is giving him a second life after his death, and I really want to know like what it was like for people at the time to listen to that, because he died, and then they had a funeral shortly after. And if you haven't watched,
Massive.
yeah,
Hmm.
if you haven't watched, I've Got a Story to Tell on Netflix. You really should. It's essentially about it's a lot about Biggie's childhood, his upbringing, and it's essentially a documentary of him um, recording Ready to Die. So it's all about like leading up to Ready to Die. And I've watched it twice. I plan on watching it again because I'm a huge Biggie fan. The documentary is so well done. It's like it's homemade footage of like him and his boys and the camera that they took on various tours and stuff like that, and just him in the studio recording Ready to Die. And there's so many great aspects, and this is a little bit of a spoiler alert. Like Life After Death isn't Ready to Die, right? Ready to Die to me is
Hmm.
like as close to a perfect hip hop album as you're gonna get. It's phenomenal front to back, and there's moments of this that kind of teeter for me, but I think the concept of it is becomes a lot more interesting and a lot more eerie because he passed away,
Right.
and I think it
Hmm.
would be interesting to hear, people that like were huge fans of him. I think it's nice that they got something after the fact, right? He was always planning on releasing this. He had been hyping it up, and part of the reason he went to California, where he was killed, was to promote this album, right? And he wasn't afraid. He said that he wanted to go and continue to do what he was doing, and that ultimately led to his demise. But I think it's really really interesting, and Biggie, like a lot of people consider this one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time, obviously, as with Ready to Die as well. But 2 hours is a long fucking
Yeah.
album, dude.
Yeah.
There's so much packed into it, right? There's so many great features. There's the production really steps up a level from Ready to Die. Ready to Die is super simplistic and really kind of early '90s sounding, and I feel like he tapped more into various production methods on this, and he touches on a lot of topics. And overall, great album to listen to, and it's still a lot of fun. It's never going to hold the place in my heart that Ready to Die does.
Yeah.
But do you think that overall, like, you enjoyed it? I know you're not a huge hip hop guy, but I know that you dabble in it.
Blake thinks he knows me, man. I mean, it's like it's funny because yeah, I love keep with this like perception that you have of me, right? This old dude who's not listening to hip hop. He's
Yeah, you
still
only listen
still
to
still listen to 8 tracks in the car, you know.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah. And the artist has to have less than 100 followers on SoundCloud for Anthony to enjoy it. So
right,
that's kind of
exactly.
your shtick.
No, you got to slide a CD under my door for me to listen to it. But no, I like it. You know, I mean, I like I said, I've resonated with Biggie for a long time, but this album as a whole, it is a lot to take in, and there's I think big time upsides, and then there's some tracks that I don't really get as far as like why they're even in here. But I think to your point or to your question on like how was this received, it was I think received in a big way again to your point because of the death. And that's so unfortunate that like when an artist dies, they get put into this lane, right? I mean, Jim Morrison. We've talked to Kurt a lot, and
Yep.
that MTV Unplugged, coming out after his death too. That's like there's a there's and no one may ever say this, but like from a commercial standpoint, when you have a situation like this, there is an opportunity to capitalize on someone's death, and like there's a lot to say about Puff, about P. Diddy, and it's like, I'm not going to go into the controversy, but like from a businessman standpoint, I think Suge Knight is the exact same way, where like
Yeah.
they will capitalize on these events, or they can't pass up the opportunity to capitalize on these events. Maybe that's like a crazy left field take,
No,
but
I don't
like,
think it is at all. I think it's fucked up, but I think it's
yeah,
accurate. I
I
think
think
that's what
so.
they do. To sell records. That's their job at the end of the day.
Right.
Unfortunately.
And I think that that's something that, like, again, it can get that motive can get swept under the rug because everyone celebrates Biggie. I mean, there's videos of his funeral in Brooklyn, just the
Yeah.
entire streets probably blasting this album. I mean, like,
Yeah.
or in a sense, like, whenever that time came, I think that it makes sense to play him out loud. But like,
Yeah.
Biggie now, like after his death, becomes this mythical figure, and I think that is something that's special. I think he would have been a big figure regardless. Same with, I mean, it's like Bob Marley's like that, Tupac's like that. These guys get elevated to a point where now it's like they're in their own category at this point. So,
Yeah.
like I said, it's super unfortunate because everyone always thinks, of course, what else is to come, but I always look at their influence on other musicians too. And Biggie is one that I think was in, like, if you think of gangster rap, you don't think of Biggie as a gangster. I don't think as Biggie as a gangster, even though I know he sold crack and all this stuff like in Brooklyn, like that's his upcoming. But like, to me, Biggie is like a big softy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have a lot of context in that, as far as like, I know how him and his mom had a really good relationship.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of that kind of heartwarming stuff, but I think that it it speaks a lot about him as a person versus just being an artist. Like the fact that he wore sunglasses to hide a lazy eye is like, that is like, it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then for him to be on the cover of this album without any glasses on, I think that is a lot to say too, just about him just putting himself out there. So like I said,
Yeah.
mad respect for him. But definitely some interesting choices, I think, to put this on there. But like you said, everything, it's a perfect storm for this kind of like mythical album that now comes out. Being called Life After Death only just like cements it too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really like, it's funny in the documentary. I get really, really emotional at the end because the end, like, it starts with essentially his death, and P Diddy's in the documentary, and it starts off by him saying like, this doesn't have to be a sad moment, right? This can be a celebration. And then
Right.
the end is his funeral procession driving through Brooklyn and seeing all of the people out on the street, like, genuinely, like, I hate when people call funerals celebrations of life. I know that that's a thing that people do now, and I understand why they do it, but like, it really felt like a celebration of what he had done for Bed-Stuy, for Brooklyn, for hip hop music in general. And it was just,
Right.
it's like heartwarming. It's sad, but it's cool to see all the people that were really positively impacted by him, and he meant a lot to a lot of people. And I think people don't, because of the era that Tupac and Biggie died in, hip hop was not on a level that it is now, right? It was growing and it was getting bigger, but I think it's kind of swept under the rug how important these artists were to a lot of people in areas of America that were kind of neglected up to this point, right? That people didn't really think about, that they didn't target, that music didn't speak to. And now you had an artist that, meant a lot to a lot of people and spoke for them, and seeing their celebration of him is always really, really powerful and really cool.
Yeah.
And I had a friend ask me, like, one time at a party at my house, I was listening to Biggie, and he asked me about like Tupac or Biggie, right? That's always the conversation. And I
Right.
was like, to me, like, I know this is a personal thing, but like, it's not even close. It's Biggie by like a mile. Like, he's just so influential, and I don't think I don't think 50 Cent happens without the Notorious B.I.G. I don't think Jay-Z happens without him. I don't think Pop Smoke happens without him. I think there's a ton of artists that are influenced by him. And he had to me, what seems to be a bigger impact in the future of hip hop music. And you don't really realize that until you look back on it and see kind of what he's done. There is a really funny moment in that documentary where his mom is in it, and she says that, like, she said that she listened to his albums. She was like, I listened to them once, and she has a thick Jamaican accent. And she's like, it was so vulgar.
Yeah.
Like, it was, and she said that she told him that she listened to it. And he was like, what are you doing listening to that? You're not supposed to be listening to that shit. Like, that's not for you, which I think is really funny.
I mean, that, like, you look at any interviews that she's done and you can see how much love there is for him, and like him being such a success story in a sense, like growing up in poverty, right, and then going through this youthful how do we say it, drug dealing, part of his life, right, and then going out of that into this music standpoint to say, all right, he's found a lane to be legit, right, and how proud she was of him, even though, yeah, he's singing about fucking bitches and killing people, or what to do with your drugs, and it's just like, yeah, that's not for her, right, but it is for somebody, and for the people who it was for, I think it did definitely validate their feelings or validate their experiences, perhaps, right, because
Yeah.
just hit his journey in the music scene too, coming from freestyling, on the streets, right, and then people realizing, all right, dude, this big guy, he can rap, like whatever it takes, like let's figure out who to get him in front of and then do it, and you see what happens, right. I mean, the talent is undeniable, but it is unfortunate that the music industry is likely what killed him, right? I mean,
Right.
drugs not even being a factor in that. These
Right.
egos and all this other bullshit attached to it. It's unfortunate, but again, we get the art. The
Yeah.
art lives on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's a shit ton of songs on here. So what do you got for your top 3
All
songs? I
right,
got a ton of honorable mentions too, because it's hard to pick 3 when there's 30 fucking songs on the
yeah.
album.
Yeah, there's a handful, then no doubt. So, all right, but I picked some. I didn't pick any of the big singles. Like I didn't pick "Hypnotize." I didn't pick what's it? Going Back to Cali. Didn't pick "Mo Money, Mo Problems." These are known songs that I think are of course very good. But I wanted to go a different route. So like number 3, I've got "Notorious Thugs" with Bone Thugs and Biggie.
Dude,
It feels so vibey, so velvet. Like
that beat, dude.
it's so good. That Biggie.
Yeah.
It's like that they complement each other so well, because Bone Thugs is so like bouncy, and Biggie's just like he's right there with them. Like I fucking love that song.
When
I've
he
always loved
comes
that
in,
song.
he's like, armed and dangerous, straight up, we know Angel Dust. It's
Oh,
so good, dude.
I mean, that's the thing. So it's like he fits with them. Biggie, I think, is a very complimentary vocalist, I guess, is the best way to put that together, to say like, and it's going to speak with the rest of my top tracks, because like he can jump into a different beat or a different rhyme that you would not think would work for him, but he makes it work, and it just it feels so good. So
Yeah.
Notorious Thugs, number 3. Number 2, 10 Crack Commandments. I think it's like
Nice.
it's so storytelling Biggie, but so like hitting all of the things he wants to hit. It's just like that song, just one after another. It just fucking bangs.
Yeah.
So I love that one. And then the number 1 track I have on this album is "What's Beef." It's very
Yeah.
smooth. It's like, again, not, if you played that instrumental to someone, I would love to do that. In fact, listeners, do this to your friends. Play the "What's Beef" instrumental for somebody, because it's fucking jazzy. It's rim shot. It's like so like fresh and so smooth, and then play the track where Biggie's rapping over it, and just goddamn, like such a perfect blend, that I had never heard that song before listening through this album. So it really stuck out to me. I like put a star next to that track. Like so clean, so smooth. Goes to number 1 pretty quickly. But like I
Nice.
said, honorable mention to all the other good ones. But What's Beef takes the cake for me.
Nice. Fuck
Yeah.
yeah, those are great choices. So man, this is tough for me because the good songs on this album are really fucking good. So number 3 is I Love the Dough. Jay-Z, Angela, Winbush feature. Look, Jay-Z and Biggie, man, that's what's so heartbreaking about this is like what could have been with the commission with
Right.
Jay-Z and Biggie, what they could have done together. They could have created a masterpiece of an album together. And when they get together, the songs always hit, man, whether it's Jay's, whether it's on a Jay-Z album, whether it's on a Biggie album, whatever it is. I love their relationship. I love that they were close, and he was kind of a guiding figure for him. And Jay-Z's verse is great. Biggie's verse is great. The chorus, I love the dough more than you know, so good. So that's a bop for me. And then so these next two are really tough for me. I got to pick 2 and 1, but I really would put them on the same level. So I'll put number 2, Going Back to Cali, because Going Back to Cali is like, I even said, and granted, at the Halloween party where my friend asked me this, I was a little drunk at the time, so I don't know if I really meant this, but I told him that Going Back to Cali single-handedly is better than anything Tupac has put out in his entire life, because I love that song so much. It's just so he's rapping so well. Like the beat is great. The intro is really funny when he's on the phone, when Diddy's on the phone with him, and he's like, he tells him like we're going to Cali, and he's like, whoa, Cali? And he's like, yes, sir. So I just love that song. And then number 1 for me, Kick in the Door, dude. Kick in the Door is so good. And the beginning is so funny when it's like that rapper taking questions from the audience, and
Right.
he's the mad rapper, and she's like, I don't understand, why are you so mad? And he goes on this whole rant. He's like, this is my 4th album, yo. My 4th album. I ain't made a dime. They out here, they make a wild records. They're ready to die. Shit, it was all right. It was all right. It was all right. Like that shit is
Yeah,
so
right.
funny to me. But that there's a line. The start of the second verse is on your mark, get set. When I spark you wet, look how dark it get when you're marked for death. And like, I just every time I hear it, I'm like, it makes me so fucking happy. I love his flow of that song, and
Yeah.
I can listen to that song 1,000 times and never get tired of it, man. It's so good.
Well, that was that intro, the Mad Rapper. I was instantly like, okay, like who is this? Who is this guy, right? So like, you know who the Mad Rapper is?
No,
Papa Dot, D Dot, Papa Dot. I guess he's like a producer. But that name sounds familiar for some reason.
it's similar because of Papa Doc and 8 Mile.
Okay,
That's where you
now
recognize it from.
okay, because like I was trying, I definitely had like this Eminem connection in my head, and all I could find on Wikipedia was that he had done some work with Eminem, Biggie, Jay-Z, Mary J. Blige, 50. So definitely some New York rappers, but that was something that I was very curious as far as like who
Yeah,
is this guy, right? Because
that intro is
he's
so
very mad.
funny.
He's very
Yeah.
mad, no
Why are you
doubt.
mad?
Yeah,
And the guy in
exactly.
the background's like, "Sir, please, your language. What's your
Yeah,
language?" So good.
yeah,
And then
no,
like
great song.
a ton of honorable mentions, right? Somebody's Got to Die, the first real track, like Hypnotize, all the ones that you mentioned. Like, there's so many good ones, and even like the very last song on the album, like which again adds this eerie quality to it of "You're nobody till somebody kills you," right? It's
Yeah,
such a good, and like people people don't realize, like when you listen to hip hop, a shit ton of hip hop music, there's always people paying homage to other rappers, right? And I don't think people kind of connect those dots, but that's in this song is that line that Jay-Z has referenced, Mac Miller has referenced, a ton of people have referenced with the kids, the dogs, everybody dying, no lying. That was this song, right? Like, and it's been that line has been played out to tons of rappers. And I don't think if you haven't listened to this album or listened to that track, you might not catch that. But it just shows like Biggie's lasting impression, right? He has these lines that people just continue to recycle over and over again.
hmm
And Wayne has done a ton of Biggie references in his songs, right? He's just he's everlasting, right? That's the
exactly.
word for him.
Yeah, it's like you can kill him, but he's not going anywhere. Like
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like his fingerprints are on all over everything. So
yeah.
hell yeah.
All right.
Um,
Well, how about
all
bottom
right. So
tracks?
bottom tracks. The way that I kind of put this together was it felt like because like I said, my first listen through, I was very torn because it felt like Biggie's verses were just plugged into a track that may or may not have existed already, but after understanding, this album was pretty much already finished by the time it came out, it's still these tracks almost felt not super necessary. If they could have shrunk this could have been solid 10 out of 10 album, or even from a commercial standpoint, you could have split this into two separate albums, but
Yeah.
it's what it is. So I got three tracks. Let's go with another with Lil Kim. I love Kim and Biggie's relationship. It just doesn't feel, this track doesn't do it for me. That's like something, because they have a history, that, and Kim being such like boss bitch, that could have been something I feel that I wanted more out of it. It's pretty much the way I could say it. So I got another, what's it called? Last Day. What did I write for Last Day? Here it is. Oh, I think Last Day was one that felt like Biggie's just like it felt like Biggie was featured into it.
Yeah.
And it, like I said, it may not be totally accurate, but that was just my first.
Well, there's a ton of verses before his verse. So it is like, it does kind of feel like they just kind of shoehorned him in, but I think it was more of like a platform for them, right?
Yeah, and that was another thought that I had, was like, okay, maybe they're like pushing these guys, right? Like 112 I had never heard of before. The Locks I had never heard of before. Obviously Jay-Z and R. Kelly we had heard of before. And Lil Kim, but those were in Bone Thugs. But yeah, that was my feeling on that. Number one, I have Fuck You Tonight, really just because R. Kelly. You know? I mean, I'm not going to talk about Diddy and R. Kelly, but they got their place, and that's where it goes. So,
no,
I don't really vibe with the song that much.
No, I don't really have a particular order, but Fuck You Tonight definitely on there, because like it's just like, man, look, this was clearly a song for the women, right? Biggie had to give the women a song, and it's just like, I feel like anytime this song comes on, I feel like a girl like getting ready to go out with her girls, like in the mirror, like I feel like I should be in the mirror, like doing my hair and putting on makeup, like listening to Fuck You Tonight. And it's like, and it's a single girl song, right? It's like she's going out, she's trying to get laid. This is what she's playing. And that's not my vibe. All right. That's not what I'm fucking with. So and also fuck R. Kelly. So that's on there.
There you go.
And then I had The World Is Filled with Too Short and Puff Daddy. Mostly because like, fuck Puff Daddy. That's really the basis of it. Like, I don't really love the song. Like, I don't like Too Short. I don't really like, I mean, obviously I don't like Puff Daddy. So hard pass for me. And then I also had another, but the only reason I really had another is like the beat just like, I don't know how to explain it. It sounds like a fucking like 80s like 80s techno kind of, or like what you would see in like an 80s club. I hate the beat. I fucking hate it. I don't know what it is about it, but I really do not fucking like it. So that took me out a lot.
I felt that too, big time.
And I will say, like, this album is interesting because, like you said, right, like they could have split it, and I understand why they didn't, right? He had a lot to say, a lot of features he wanted to put on it, but the album starts off like 1 through 11 is like, even really 1 through 13. I don't love I Got a Story to Tell, but 13 is Notorious Thugs. 1 through 13 is like jam packed, like so many fucking good songs. You have Somebody's Gotta Die, Hypnotized, Kicking the Door. I Love the Dough, What's Beef, Mo Money, Mo Problems. Like there's so many good songs, and then the back half like kind of starts to dwindle right after Notorious Thugs. There's Miss You and Another, which I'm not a huge fan of. Going Back to Cali and 10 Crack Commandments obviously are great, but the last like 18 through 24 is kind of like, like I can take it or leave it. I like some of the songs in that run, in that bottom run, especially the last track, and My Downfall is a good track, but like there's just a lot to be desired. Kind of, it just runs out of steam almost, right? And I feel like he could have chopped it at 18 tracks and it would have been perfect, you know.
And that's where like I think now into the past and wonder what other double hip hop albums had come out prior to this, because nothing comes to mind. Anything come to mind for you? I mean, Wu-Tang perhaps, but I don't know if they did that.
Tupac's wasn't.
All Eyes on Me might
Yeah,
be.
All Eyes on Me, I think, is a double album.
Yeah.
Which is what I was gonna say. Yeah, All Eyes on Me is a double album. Which again, even like All Eyes on Me, and I'm not a huge Tupac fan, but even All Eyes on Me, I'm like, wrap it up, man.
Yeah,
Like
right.
27 tracks. Like, come on,
Yeah.
let's cut some of the fat, dude.
Look up 36. I think it's called 36 Chambers Wu-Tang.
Yeah, 36 Chambers. I think no,
That's
enter
93.
the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers. It's a
Okay.
single album. The reason you think it's a double album is because there's 800 people rapping on every song, so it feels like a double album.
Just reading the track names plus everyone. Yeah, it
Yeah.
feels like a lot. Gotcha.
And while we're on that topic, shout out to Bring the Ruckus, one of the best hip hop tracks of all time, dude.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
I just saw that and had to shout
We
it
should
out.
do Wu-Tang. Definitely.
Yeah, we should. But yeah, man, I mean, it's a long album. It kind of drags on towards the end, but like at the same time, knowing that this was gonna be like, knowing now what we know that it was his last album, I'm glad that it was so long, right? That there was so much music and so much of his work in there. And we've talked about this a shit ton, but like they continued to put out his music after the fact, which pisses me the fuck off. And I know that it pisses you off, but like because clearly they're just trying to suck money out of somebody who's already dead, which drives me insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, Born Again was like, so Eminem is on Born Again, which is really interesting on the song Dead Wrong. But there's a lot of features, obviously, because they're just taking verses from other tracks that he had recorded, things of that nature.
Exactly. And
Which,
you can feel that it's like kind of just,
right.
conducted, for lack of a better term.
Right. And that, like, we've had this debate a lot on the pod, and I don't know if you've been on for the episodes where we talked about it, but it really drives me crazy when record labels do that, because it's like, would this even have been what this artist wanted, right? Like, do they want their legacy impacted by your desire to milk money out of people that are already gone? Like, let these, like Juice WRLD, XXX Tentacion, like these artists. Mac is different because Mac's family was involved in the release of Circles,
Right.
and Faces was already recorded, and then Nipsey they haven't released any music from Nipsey, really. I mean, they've released like one-off songs, but those other artists, it's like, let these boys rest, man. Like Juice WRLD in particular, who was 21 years old, like his life was tragically taken by a drug overdose, and like, let him and his family rest and stop trying to put out music that's unfinished in order for you to make money. It just drives me fucking insane.
Yeah, I mean, the only stipulations I would get behind are, one, definitely the like estate backing it. Whether it's family, whoever. I mean, I would say it has to be family, not just like whoever owns the rights to the music, but the family backs it. And then if you put it out, like, you're not going to say Born Again is by the Notorious B.I.G., right? Because it's not. It can be by, this collective of artists who want to support him in honor of him and get these samples and then put out an album that way. Like, I love that concept. But to say that any person, knows what is in his best interest, right, or in his family's best, it's hard to digest. It's hard to swallow.
Yeah, no, for sure. So Life After Death.
Yeah, let's hear what they have to say.
So before I get into reviews, just a little bit on the album. So Life After Death, second studio album, sold 690,000 copies in the first week, peaking at number 1 on the Billboard 200. It received widespread critical acclaim upon release and was nominated for Best Rap Album, Best Solo Rap Performance for his single Hypnotize, and Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group for its second single, Mo Money, Mo Problems, at the 4th Annual Grammy Awards. Let's see. I want to see more about if they talk about. Okay, sold 690,000 copies in its first week. The album was certified diamond in 2000, denoting shipment of 10 million copies. It has been credited as one of the best-selling rap albums of all time. It also made the largest jump to number 1 on the Billboard 200 chart in history, jumping from 176 to number 1 in 1 week. It also spent 4 weeks at number 1 on the top R&B hip-hop charts and topped the Billboard year-end chart as a Billboard 200 for 1997. It spent 4 consecutive weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200 from the weeks of April 12th to May 3rd of 1997, later being bombarded from the top entry by singer Mary J. Blige's third studio album, Share My World. So obviously did a fuck ton of numbers, 10 million copies. Not surprised there in any way, shape, or form by that. I don't have an actual review from Rolling Stone, but on their top 500 best albums of all time, here we go. Anthony, take your guess. Top 500. I'll give you a range.
I think I saw this.
Oh, you did?
I think so. I think I saw it. Is it 169?
It's 179.
179. All right, so there you go. But so it's what was it out of 300?
Out of 500.
Okay, out of 500. Yeah. Damn. I could not even imagine ranking 500 albums.
I know,
Jesus
dude.
Christ. Yeah.
It says Life After Death, Notorious B.I.G.'s second and final album, is a direct sequel to Ready to Die, his debut album. The album starts with the title track, which is a continuation of Suicidal Thoughts, the third to last song on that record. With this album, Biggie was just getting started. A double album, it was his magnum opus. It's a long, clocking in at 2 hours, but he had a lot to say. A good chunk of the record addresses his various feuds. For example, Kicking the Door is about Nas, Jeru the Damage, Raekwon, Ghostface Killah, and even the track's producer, DJ Premier. Of course, there are plenty of references to the most famous feud in hip-hop history, and Biggie takes many an opportunity to hit out at the recently deceased Tupac. To be fair, though, the album was recorded and ready to go on Halloween of 1996, but Biggie was involved in a car accident in September 1996, which delayed the release. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, a double
Did you
album.
feel that? Did you feel that he took a lot of shots at Tupac? Because it didn't come across that way.
No, it didn't come across that way. And like, to me, like, when you go watch the documentary or listen to old songs or listen to interviews, like, I don't think this is the thing. It's widely regarded that Biggie and Pac didn't think this was as big as everybody else did, right? And it was very much hyped up by record labels and people involved in that situation, for whatever reason, to fuel record sales, anything of that nature. I don't think, like, before Biggie went to California, he was on a radio show talking about how he didn't have any, like, issue with Tupac. It wasn't some big thing to him, right? I think it was to them, I don't think it was as big, and third parties were involved in this. And I'm not going to get into the actual death, because on the Ready to Die episode, we talk about it and talk about kind of who's behind that and things of that nature. But I really don't think he thought it was as big of a deal as other people thought it was, you know?
Right.
And then Pitchfork gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Today, we commemorate the 20th anniversary of Christopher Wallace's death with a review of his 1997 sophomore album, Life After Death, released 16 days after he was murdered. Life After Death is Biggie's second and final full-length album, which also serves as his first posthumous release. Begins where its predecessor, 1994's Ready to Die, left off, with a narrator dying from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. The blast comes courtesy of a large-bore cartridge from a high-powered revolver, while his best friend and confidant, played by label boss and possible, don't know what that word is, Sean Puff Daddy Combs, listens in disbelief, possibly willing him back to life, possibly imagining an alternate reality where Christopher Wallace remains alive. So I thought that was really interesting, right? Like, the intro track is Puff basically telling him, like, it's not time to go, you have more to do, you know? And I wonder if that was recorded. I would assume that was recorded before everything happened, right? Like, because
I mean, I don't know. You can't put anything past Puffy, apparently.
True.
Like, I mean, this motherfucker probably, I don't know. Who knows, right? But it is an interesting thought to say, you know, yeah, how much of this was premeditated, or how much was it just ironic that it came out that way?
Yeah.
So
yeah, very interesting. Well, let's get into ratings. What do you got?
All right, so I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. I think it is a very impactful album, is from a hip hop standpoint, from just a musical standpoint, right? In that time period, I think it really does leave an impact on the world. But I think there's definitely some things that I could do without in this album. But solid 8 out of 10 for me.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I hate to just toe the line here, but yeah, also an 8. Like I
There you
think
go. Look at that.
it's fucking classic, right? There's so many
Right.
bangers on this album. I revisit it so much, and going back to Cali alone, if I wanted to give it a 7, I would bump it up to an 8 because I love that song so much.
Right.
But there's a lot of good, and like I said, it dwindles towards the end, but it's still really really enjoyable, and it had a lasting impact, right? Everything he did had a lasting impact, and I think that's what's really really hard about Biggie's death is Biggie, despite what he said on Ready to Die, despite the themes of both of these albums, Biggie wanted to be alive. He wanted to
Oh
live
yeah.
his life. He wanted to
He had a
provide.
kid. You know?
Right, right. He wanted to provide for his mother, his child. He wanted to bring money back to Bed-Stuy. He wanted to uplift those artists. You know, he was in television shows. There was a lot of his career left for him, and I know that despite the album title Ready to Die, Biggie was not ready to leave, right? He had more that he wanted to do. And I think that's what makes the death so heartbreaking is there was a lot left for him. And I think that we were robbed just like with of Kurt's death, but it hurts more because it was somebody else, right? Like it
Yeah.
was somebody taking his life from him when he wasn't ready to go. And I think that's what's hard. That's what's so hard to wrap your head around is he wanted to have a future and he had a lot of life left in him. And you
Right.
know, rest in peace. I'm glad that we got what we got out of him because having two real albums, and being
Yeah.
held in this high of a regard from every hip hop artist ever is crazy. You know, that just speaks to how
Yeah.
powerful he was and how good he was at what he did, you
Mhm.
know?
And even like just of the times, I mean, like as this genre is starting to explode, he's the cream of the crop and still likely the cream of the crop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it speaks a lot.
100%.
Hmm.
Cool. Well, everybody go listen to Life After Death, please. Honestly, front to back. I know it's long, but go take a drive somewhere and just listen to the whole thing and let it ride. But let's get into rides or dies. Anthony,
So
intro.
hold on.
You pick.
Before we go, give me 10 seconds. Let me rotate dogs real quick, okay? Because my
Okay,
home.
I'll chop it
So
up. I'll chop it up.
1 second. 1 second.
Yeah. So while Anthony goes, I just have to say I am going to the Sphere in Las Vegas to see Dead and Company. Okay, this coming weekend, I'm going May 26th. Let's see. Let me make sure it's May. Yeah, May 26th, the Sunday show. So I will not take a ton of videos, but I will take some videos, and I may show them on the pod. But I need you guys, if you're listening when this comes out Wednesday, to send me some recommendations of restaurants you like in Las Vegas. I'm a frequenter of Las Vegas because I'm a degenerate, so I'm no stranger to Vegas. But I will be there. So if there's any restaurants, any niche restaurants that you want me to try, let me know. I will be at the pool. I'll be at the blackjack and the craps table, and then I'll be at Dead and Company. Taking videos and jamming out. So I'm really excited for that, and I'm really excited to show Anthony kind of maybe as Anthony, I'm sure Anthony would love this. Maybe I'll live stream the whole set from my phone, and not pay attention to the visuals at all and just broadcast it. I think that would be really cool. So,
So yeah, so about my ride or dies, right? Speaking on Vegas, my parents just came back from Vegas a week ago, and I was like, if you would have just stayed one more week, you could have gone to see the Grateful Dead, and I could have
yeah,
been infinitely jealous of this.
yeah,
But so on my rides or die, I had to bring. Has the Grateful Dead made an appearance on this podcast yet? I don't
I don't
think
think they
so.
have, which is
So
insane to me.
beyond overdue. But I bring out Sugar Magnolia to your eardrums.
Yeah,
It's one of my favorite Grateful Dead songs. I don't know. I'm lucky enough to. I don't have a magnolia tree yet, but I'm about to start planting some. So about to have a little magnolia forest over here. But I love magnolia trees, and song is beautiful. I mean, Grateful Dead is an interesting vibe. I remember the first time I ever thought about the Grateful Dead. It was not the like before I had heard it. I had heard of them, and this type of music was not what I was expecting at all.
yeah,
Probably like 18 years old and thinking, all right, let's listen to the Grateful Dead. And it's like fucking banjos and guitars. And
yeah.
it's like, I'm like, what? This is what every time, but it grows on you. So I love, I'm a big fan of the Grateful Dead. Love this song. Um, So what do you think, Mr. Blake?
I mean, I was surprised to pick such a song that I was very familiar with. You know, that is not the route you normally go. So
Hey,
when I saw that, I was like, "Fuck it, let's let it ride again." You know,
yeah,
and obviously rides, right? Like I
yeah.
think it's funny to see. Have you watched uh oh
The long
fuck
doc, long strange
yeah,
ship.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Long Strange Ship on
fuck yeah,
Amazon, like the eight
fuck yeah.
episode one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Great.
it's phenomenal, and it's really interesting because I think people forget that the Grateful Dead was a bluegrass band. I don't care what anyone
Oh yeah,
says. Their inception, they were a
no doubt.
bluegrass band, right? And like it's funny to see the Dead now, and even like I think a lot of Deadheads widely regard '80s Dead as the best Dead, like live show performance wise, and they were very much a rock band at that point. But they started as a bluegrass band, man. That was their vibe, and it's listening to any Dead song, it's great to get a blast from the past. And I'll go. It's funny because there's a lot of pretentious Deadheads that don't like Dead and Co. that won't listen to them. Whatever, such is life. They can get
Yeah,
fucked if they want to miss out
yeah.
on that. That's on them. But I listen to both of them. Right, I'll listen to Grateful Dead, like old stuff. I'll listen to Dead and Company on Spotify. I like it now because the quality is so much better. Right, like
Yeah.
it's so clean and I really enjoy listening to him. So Sugar Magnolia, always gonna ride for the end of time. I really need to make Amanda watch that documentary before we go on Sunday because she's never seen him, doesn't really know anything about him. So I think it'll
Or
be
yeah, or
interesting.
you could just leave it blind because here's the thing: the energy at those shows is undeniable, right? I mean, like I've seen Dead and Company when they would come to Atlanta, over the past handful of years, and the energy is you walk in that building and you're going to see kids, holding their parents' hand, and you're going to see, elderly people, right, who are
Yeah,
just still making it, right? Half of them are on stage, and it's like
yeah,
they're still delivering, and it's still such a moving experience. And now with Dead and Company, you have the Beam too, which the Beam in the Sphere. Oh my gosh, I can't even bring myself to watch those videos because like that, I can just the visuals in my head of that experience are going to be just insane.
yeah.
So like that's going to be super cool. There's also some really cool documentaries on Mickey Hart, who's one of the drummers, um,
Yep.
painting. So like he would do these acrylic pours, and he has like his speakers tied or tethered into the canvas. So he'll make a stroke on the beam, and it'll vibrate, and the vibration goes through the canvas while the paint. It's amazing. Dude's an
Yeah.
artist. They're all artists, and I think that's what speaks so much about them, that they can still do this in their age and not be burnt out.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm envious of your upcoming experience, and for her to not know anything, like fuck yeah, do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Have
gonna be
fun.
sick. We're
It's
very,
gonna be
very
cool.
excited.
Hell yeah.
So I picked totally 180. I picked Moneymaker by Ludacris, and let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I picked this song. So I rewatched yet again. I've seen this movie like 5 times. I rewatched The Big Short, and there is a scene in The Big Shorts. For those of you that don't know, The Big Short is about the
The
housing
housing
market
crisis. Yeah.
collapse, yeah, in America. It's directed by Adam McKay. Phenomenal movie. Big names in there: Ryan Gosling, Stephen Carell, or Steve Carell, Brad Pitt. A ton of great actors. And the movie is phenomenal. But it's about guys that made money off of the housing market collapse. Christian Bale's in it as well. But there's a scene where they're talking about all the bankers just selling mortgages essentially to people that don't deserve them, and they're playing Moneymaker by Ludacris in the scene where they're all like racking up money, not realizing the damage they're about to cause. I was listening, I was like, fuck yeah, shout out Luda, man, shout out Ludacris. It was fun to listen to, so that's why I picked it. What did you think?
Yeah, I of course I'll know the song, like Ludacris, so it definitely rides. But I'll say this: that was one of the highlights of the Super Bowl halftime show. Was it's like everyone knows Usher and knows his songs, but it's like, dude, are they gonna do? Yeah, and is Ludacris gonna be there? Right? It's fucking. I think the game was in Atlanta. Was the Super Bowl in Atlanta?
I don't remember.
I
I
can't
do
remember.
not
I can't
remember.
remember. Anyway, fucking Luda shows up, and yeah, that's the
Yeah.
steal the show for sure.
Yeah.
So, rides for me, no doubt.
Fuck yeah. Hell yeah. All right, so
Here we
Anthony,
go.
let's oh
Yeah,
man.
I'm
Let's
excited.
get into Before Sunrise, man. I gotta ask.
You gotta ask. Okay.
Why this
Why?
movie? What was the purpose? What was the
Wow.
message you were trying to send me? Was it because you know that I'm fresh into a relationship and
Oh,
I'm feeling the love and that's why you wanted to throw me those vibes? What about this movie made you want to pick it?
this movie has nothing to do with you, Blake. So I'm sorry. It's not about you. It's about an experience, man. Like this movie, I feel is so. The first time I watched it, I had lived this movie. I think a lot of people have lived this movie before, and it really spoke to me because it's so simple, right? The concept of this movie is so simple. In fact, it's a movie. Richard Linklater. First off, one of my favorite directors. He's done Dazed and Confused, Boyhood, Slacker, Waking Life, one of my favorite movies of all time. Bad News Bears, School of Rock. Dude kills film, right? And he does it his own way. This is an independent film too. Or actually, he got funding, but very low budget. But he talks about this movie because he experienced this personally, and wanted to write a movie about it. And it's a movie. He calls it a movie where nothing's going on, but everything is happening. Right? There's so much subtleties throughout this movie because it's a very simple concept. Boy meets girl on a train and have a night of an experience together, and it there's just so much chemistry on the screen. The writing is so good. They all wrote it together. So Richard Linklater, wrote the original screenplay, and then Ethan Hawke and Julie Depley, the two main characters, they had their input on it. And I think it is such a beautiful chapter of a story because there's more, and we're gonna watch the rest of them. So
great.
in fact, we're gonna let's do an aside in a couple weeks of all three because I hate that I already get your vibe on this, but like you gotta things you may not understand, don't just shut them out. Like this is something. Have you ever experienced anything like this before, Mr. Blake?
I mean, I've experienced being in love for sure. And
a random encounter with a human that you're like, wow, what would happen if we pursued this?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I definitely get that, and I will say, just quick aside. So what's really funny is long before I started dating Amanda, so she speaks French and Creole, and she's like she speaks to her family. They all speak French or whatever. So me being me, I started learning French like I don't know, half a year ago because I was like, if I ever bag her, then I'm going to impress her by being able to understand some things in French, which my French is still very bad. I have a long way to go. But when he says, un billet s'il vous plaît, that means a ticket, please. And when he said it, I was like, oh, fuck, I know what that means. Like, I thought that was really funny. I was like, hell yeah, I'm glad I took those French lessons. But
there's such a line from Julie Depley who says to Ethan Hawke, she's like, "You're American. I know you only know one language, right?"
Yeah,
it's like a little slight. So
yeah, we got
these little.
Amanda got a real kick out of that. She thought that was funny because she's like, "Yeah, you typical Americans only know one fucking language."
Yeah, right.
But yeah. So I mean, look, I didn't like despise the movie. I thought like their chemistry was great, and look, I'm comfortable enough in my sexuality. Ethan Hawke's an attractive guy, right? So it works. Him and Julie, I guess she's French, so we can say it the French way. They're both attractive. They got good chemistry, and the vibe is cool. But like, I don't know. It kind of just dragged on for me, man. It was a little boring. It was like, all right, I get it. Like people are in love. They're kind of doing their own thing, which is cute. And I really like the ending. But here's the thing with the ending. I wish that they wouldn't have made more movies, and I haven't watched them, but like I would have liked it had it just ended with like I'll meet you in 6 months, or like be back here in 6 months, right? And I guess you're right, like you don't have to, but I think it would have been better had that just been the conclusion, and you can make your own assumptions, right? Like did they not, like what would have happened? But
so you have right now the moment, because I'm going to challenge you, don't look up anything about these other movies because you only have this one time, right? So Blake, what happens? What happens to Julie and Celine, Jesse and Celine?
So ignoring the fact, what I would like to imagine is he comes
Okay.
back. He comes back. He waits for her. He thinks that she's not coming. Like, and then the last train rolls in and she gets off and she's
Okay.
there. You know, and they meet each other, vice versa, one or the other, right? And they go
Right.
live a happy life together. You know, I that's
Okay.
my optimist viewpoint. That's what I would like to see happen. But it was just like I don't know, Anthony. Every time I think I know where you're going, you zig, you zag, you twist, you turn, and I don't know what's going on. Like, where did this movie come from? Like, are you a lover at heart? I don't know. You know?
Yes, right. Well, like here's the thing. Like this is a beautiful movie, right? Because of the intimacy between two people on screen translating, back home. Now, you're not going to get a lot of action in this movie, but it's not meant to be that.
Right.
This is kind of my okay, so if I'm gonna angle this to you, this is kind of your art house testing ground of film, right? Because there's some movies out there, Tree of Life, that is one of the best movies of all time, right? But if I put it in front of you right now, you're gonna be like, what is what's going
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like this is a little taste into that kind of realm by a very notable director and some familiar faces. But again, this movie is it I think reflects on a lot of people's life experiences, and some people have had these experiences, some people haven't. Some people can fantasize through this film of what happens, when you take that chance, when you get off the train, because this movie could have ended right in the first
Right.
5 minutes when she's like, I'm going to stay on this train. How many people have done that? I've purposely not pursued things for the fear of what might happen, right? But
Right.
I think it's about taking chances, and everyone has that period of time where you're completely free, where you don't have any responsibilities. You can take a day off or be a day late to whatever you might be doing, and go have an experience. And I think that's kind of like this underlying tone of this movie is like what happens when you take that chance.
Yeah.
And hopefully it encourages people to take that chance if they haven't, or realize that it may not be too late to do something like that.
Yeah.
So that's, and the second film is the one that I think is most widely regarded as the best of this trilogy. But this one kind of it's the beginning point. It's kind of like the rise, right? And I'm that's not a pun intended, but like Rise of the Planet of the Apes, right?
Right.
Into Sunrise. It's like it is like this kind of intro into the story, but it's beautifully done. It's shot on site in Vienna, and I love the ending montage where it kind of highlights all the places where they had been, and but they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
But their imprint is there, and again, if you've ever walked around a city with a person you just met and just been totally open for an experience, I think this movie speaks volumes to you,
Yeah.
as it does to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. I get it. I like hearing your insight and get the take a little peek under the hood, see what's going on in Anthony's mind when he's picking these movies. So that's very fair, and
Well,
it
and
that makes it a little bit better. And I did like I get it. I catch the vibe, right? I love the idea of like what you're so caught up in that moment. You're so caught up in this person's and like even if like there's been experiences where I've met people that like I'm not in love with, right? That I just like they're such a character, they're such a unique presence or energy where I'm like, fuck it, I'm in for whatever, man. Let's do whatever
it
we
kind
gotta
of
do, and that
is.
I like that.
I was about to say you went to Electric Forest with me on a moment's notice, so it's like
Yeah,
you regardless of this situation, whether it's going somewhere or being with somebody, or it's like just being open to experiences, I think just only enhances your life. It may make things a little more challenging, a little more bumpy as you have to come back to reality. I think that was a lot of their internal conflict between Jesse and Celine throughout this movie was like, we are attracted to each other. We could potentially start a new life together, right? But we also have our real lives. And I think that the last 10 minutes of the movie where they start to realize like, fuck, reality is coming back,
yeah,
and it's like, don't like that. We want to push against it, but you have to kind of, pick and choose your direction in life. And I think that feeling is also very familiar to people when you come back from a festival or from a music show or some sort of big life-changing experience when you're back to reality. And it's like, damn, if only that feeling could last forever.
yeah,
And I think that's what they do is they bottle it up in this film.
yeah. No, that's fair, very fair.
So Yeah.
All right. Well, you want to let the viewers know what we're doing next week?
So for the album next week, we're gonna go. This is another test for you, Blake. This is a deep. Well, first off, let me say Richard Linklater. He's got a movie coming out next week called Hitman. That should have came out a year ago, but it's gonna come out uh, May 24th. So just in a few days, perhaps.
Nice.
But as far as music listening goes, we're going to go back in time to the origins of some electronic music in the U.S. It's a group, Telephone Tel Aviv, the album from 2001, Fahrenheit Fair Enough. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting test for your ears, and like I said, I'm always prepared for the Blake Poljasic skepticism that's likely coming my way. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
I'm
that's fair.
optimistic.
I'm
So
glad that you're aware that that is coming, but
oh yeah,
you've adjusted by now. So for the
yeah,
movie, sorry, I got dogs barking in the background. For the
we got
movie, we're doing the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, David Fincher. Fucking very interested. I'm sure you've seen it before, but it'll be interesting to give it a rewatch. And man, there's a lot to unpack in this movie. So and
so.
I read the first three books.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so we'll talk more about that next week for sure.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right,
Hell
I'm
yeah!
game.
All
Let's
right,
do it.
y'all. See y'all next week, Anthony. See you soon.
Very soon. Peace.
Peace.